Congressman Crowley, the results here weren't even close. What should Democrats learn from this election?
Well, especially in the Queens portion of the district, makes about 15% of the district. He did better than Biden did in 2022. That's Suozzi. I think I also have to keep in mind, Anna, that Tom Suozzi himself is a machine unto himself. He's a pretty interesting cat. He doesn't shy away from anything. And I think what it really did, he ran a local race on national issues. And I think that's what made the difference. He did embrace, he didn't shy away. And I also think this sends a very, very, very strong message to other Republicans in the state, like Mike Lawler, even like Stefanik in upstate New York, who fancies herself as a potential vice presidential candidate. It's not going to be easy going in New York State by any stretch of the imagination.
Governor Kasich, Long Island is about 2,000 miles away from the southern border, but immigration was a huge part of this election. The New York Times writes, rather than shrink from the issue, though, Mr. Suozzi made the migrant crisis a centerpiece of his campaign. He called for Mr. Biden to close the border, and he went on local news to call for the deportation of a group of migrant men charged with assaulting police officers in Times Square. And, Governor, let's not forget, it was Republicans who killed that bipartisan border bill in the Senate, right? Is this issue what it once was for Republicans?
Oh, yeah, sure it is. But he sounded like a Republican. Really? Here's what was interesting about this whole thing is that here he's really taken on the administration. I think Joe said it right. He's a man unto himself. And he started talking about closing the border, and he challenged the Republican and said, why did your party shut down these negotiations? He also took on the issue of crime, which was related to some folks, some illegals who had been apprehended. But look, it's a special election. This guy's pretty well known. I think it's just, and special elections are always different. They're anomalies in many sense. Yeah, they're special. I mean, they spend so much money up there, it blows your mind what they're spending in order to go and serve in the U.S. House, which in and of itself, you wonder what they're thinking, right? It's been so crazy down there. But look, immigration is going to be an issue. I think that Joe Biden has not been clear enough. He has not spoken out enough about the fact that we were on the verge of having a significant agreement and the Republicans shut it down. He needs to be out talking about that. And I think what Suozzi did is he defanged the issue and said, hey, look, I want to close that border down, too. So his message was the right message, and he was known, and they had a lot of money, and apparently the Republican candidate wasn't so hot. So and I see that Trump blamed her, too. So, it just goes on and on.
So maybe it was the specific candidates in this contest. Maybe it was that it was a special election. Maybe it was the shadow of George Santos. Maybe it was how the candidates talked about the issues. Maybe it was the weather. There are so many factors here. But Congressman Crowley, let's listen to what we heard from some voters last night about what this race meant for them and the upcoming election in November.
And what do you think this means for the 2024 battle for the House?
I think it's hopefully that this is a bellwether, that this means that people are sick of people fighting and they want to see people who want to work together across party aisles.
What does this result mean to you?
Oh, this is a lifeline for the Democratic Party here. And I also have a lot of confidence that people are going to reject the extremism of the former president in November, just like we rejected extremism in the New York 3rd Congressional District.
Congressman Crowley, neither President Biden nor former President Trump got very involved in this specific race, but did they have an impact?
Well, I think it's hard to avoid either of them, quite frankly. They're bigger than life. And I agree with John, though, on much of this. I mean, Tom Suozzi, as I mentioned earlier, he's an incredible campaigner. He's been a mayor, he's been county executive, he's ran for statewide office a number of times. He's a known entity. But as I said earlier, in talking to folks in the campaign, they ran a very local race on national issues. I do think that there, as Tom has said, to his Republican colleagues to be, stop just pandering to Trump. Stop just every day, just falling down on your knees to him, and start standing up for yourselves. I do think that people do respect that. And I think John Kasich is just a great example of that. People who just don't kowtow to others. Suozzi has been a maverick within the House itself. And I think it also sends a strong message. You have to represent your district. I think Tom does that well.
Governor Kasich, this district is suburban. The median household income here is in the six figures. Quickly, if you will, how do you see, just the makeup of this district translating into the general election?
Well, first of all, I want to return the compliment to Joe Crowley. Look, those were the days when we used to figure things out, and so he had a spine, and he knew what he wanted to do. Look, at the end of the day, Anna, it will come down to the economy. How do people feel? And I know there's all these economists. Sometimes we confuse them with astrologers. The bottom line on this is, what does it cost for a dozen eggs, a quart of milk? That's what's going to matter. They can say how great the economy is, but people have to feel it in the checkout line at the grocery store. At the end of it all, that's what's going to matter. One other final thing. I think Trump has got, I don't believe he's going to get these independent voters. They're not going to break towards him because of some of the crazy things he says. I think he drives those independent voters away, and he also hurts himself with a lot of disaffected Republicans. However, that's not enough to rely on. Joe Biden has got to get out there. He's got to talk about what he wants. I know the Democrats want to hide him. Can't hide him. He's got to speak, and even if he has some gaffes, that's okay. Show you know what you're doing. Show that you're in charge. That's where I think this whole thing is going to go.